You got shit on me.
No, I don't got shit on her because she usually thinks ahead of me and will come at me with comments and concerns about my thoughtless comments and concerns that really contribute to the both of us that sometimes I just fail to recognize, but we'll get a free advice tip daily. Driving on the road.
This all sounds very familiar for whatever reason.
I think that's a good way to start it off. Hello, welcome to the Sijlent podcast, everybody. I am here with Boy Rothling and OK Lelly from Off Kilter. It's going to be our first group interview today. Very excited.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I've been stupid excited. First, I'm going to talk about the both of y'all together, and then we'll kind of split up into individual solo projects. So let's talk about Off Kilter. Do y'all want to tell me kind of the story behind that?
So Off Kilter is my brainchild that Gabe was already just sort of a part of by choice. I've told him multiple times, like, if you don't want to be a part of it, that's totally okay. You know, sometimes when you mix like your relationship with other aspects, business-wise or musically, that can get really tiring, especially if you see them all the time. But we have a lot of mutual interests when it comes to music. And I think writing-wise, he's just so much fun, and he provides a lot of a good foundation. So fortunately, Off Kilter is sort of based around that idea, and it has very good friends of ours. We have Samuel DeLong, who goes by Samuel L. Jackson as his artist name. It's spelled Samuel E.L. Jackson, and you'll see those tags and references in Gabe's Boy Rothling project.
Yes.
We have my friend Johnny, who is in a few projects himself, this really wonderful band, like a Latin alternative from McAllen, I believe, and they've come up here to Dallas called Dezora and also Kana. And then our friend Sebastian. And yeah, it's really fun just to write music. The Futura Fest show will be our second official show together as a group.
Awesome. You two like give the impression that it's like y'all been together for a while.
I'll let Gabe answer this one because 3 of the members are friends he's had since high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sebastian actually had been pretty close to since kindergarten, and musically we weren't like too much of a duo until this, and it was kind of eased in just through the familiarity and extra hands with auxiliary and vocals. Turns out like he is solid on vocals, and he understands the auxiliary aspect of music really well. But yeah, half of it's like we're all super close. That definitely helps in the rehearsal space and in the hanging out all together space. Yeah, we're creeping up on like 2 years come later this summer. But ever since we've known each other really for like 3 years now, it's been musically compatible, I'd say.
Yeah. It seems like y'all are navigating it very well and just work well together, like out in and outside of like that space as like partners, you know.
Like when it comes to writing in general, like romantically, it's very interesting to take a step back because now we're talking like, when you make art anywhere in any aspect, you're translating just like your own version of a language that is very familiar and can be heard, but like you have your own, everybody has their own interpretation. So far with like Gabe and fortunately the rest of Off Kilter, that interpretation has been very back and forth. We'll still have moments where like there's a wall and then the other individual will interpret constant interpretation of it just slightly differently or drastically differently. And there is a lot of just letting go and admitting to myself, like, how I hear it in my head, he's probably not going to hear it that way. But I have to accept that his ideas are probably going to take it further than I could ever imagine. Yeah. And that's a lot of sacrifice, but it works out pretty well.
Yeah, it's a lot of sacrifice. Whenever we're kind of home doing this or just like away from Off Kilter, working together or writing together, like it's a very different approach than when we know this is going to be for Off Kilter or this is something that already has a location. But when it doesn't, it's really we're pushing more to like really have our ideas come through individually, which could be more headbutting because this isn't for anything else, so we can apply more of us into it, which is a good thing. But there's like that balance where it could kind of get iffy when it's not for something specific.
Yeah, that's something interesting to think about because y'all both seem constantly like creative. So it's just really inspiring to see that like from the outside looking in, anyways, it's like everything y'all do is for the craft. When y'all are writing alone, is there any like a specific moment of like maybe a song that released or something that is coming up that you can think of where it's like you wrote it in one headspace and then you heard it for like another group, like let's say for solo, for Cherry, for yourself. I forget there's not visuals. I'm pointing at everyone here, but like, is there like a specific moment or story that the both of y'all can think of?
In terms of like bringing an idea somewhere and it realizing it's not for this.
Yeah, and like almost like repurposing it, like for clarification.
Yeah. Jerry Mantis does that a lot. Sometimes we're writing songs like we don't write together. It's like, oh, we'll have this format and this bass idea, and you take it home. And most of the people who have more of the higher harmonic melody kind of roles will just do what they do at home in their own head. But then you can kind of get conflicting with like clashing parts. So sometimes it's like waiting until like there's more to write. But most of the time, yeah, it's like I just take home a voice memo recording.
Okay.
And then just write over that.
Yeah, because I'll put a bookmark in that when we talk about Cherry. Lelly, did you have a story like that of kind of just something you thought like maybe even like a solo song that you almost like gave up? I think it would be like a good way of phrasing it,
Okay, so definitely when it comes to writing in general, I feel like I do a lot of like character writing, if that makes sense. And if I can sort of envision the space of those characters or just like a story, I'll be able to fit it in pertaining to the group or the project itself. I've done that a lot with myself. So like Lelly isn't even my real name. It's my like stage name. Yeah. And I use that particularly so that I can continue to create in that space. But if something doesn't work and I'm writing it for something, it'll usually be on the back burner. I recycle a lot of my stuff. Some of my stuff will be sitting for like a year. And then all of a sudden, if I'm sitting there trying to create and I put it in the right headspace, or it'll just happen. I'm just like, oh, I'm going to take this. This finally has a home.
Yeah.
And I'll hand it over and people are able to build off of it. But writing is definitely, it's all just so subjective. It is kind of like in its own like free floating time, but it'll always just sort of disperse itself. But I feel like with Off Kilter, I feel like it's a very almost Cherry type moment. I've just been writing and you guys have been given it and you do what you will.
I think your style and like your the raw form of idea is always so your style that whenever it is brought to anybody else and outside minds come into it, like your style remains. And it's crazy that it could do that when everything else is not really thinking about what the original idea is, but just individually going with whatever at the time we want. Yeah. It tends to work out better in my head than anticipated.
Thank you.
Because the structure is so well done. So that is
my head feels so big right now. Thank you very much. I think it's a lot of good combination of musicality, but also personality. That's something I really, really wanted with Off Kilter. The definition of the term literally suggests like not as it seems or just sort of weird, uncomfortable. It could have good or bad connotations, but we'll leave it up to everybody's interpretation. And I think it's like this perfect little medley so far of just personalities shining through in a musical complex. I think the writing is great. I might be a little biased because I did write the songs, but we haven't had too much time to really sit down, maybe think about recording, and even really like flesh the songs out. Like we've only still had a few rehearsals with the originals, but with what we already have and what everybody's providing, like once it starts to fine tune, I'm really excited to see how everybody shines. It's gonna be really weird. I hope everybody likes weird. because it's going to be weird.
Yeah.
I love weird.
Every single person in the band has like fantastic music taste.
Yeah.
So when given the trust of like, do what you think would fit here, or get put your weirdness into it, or what you think weird wise will work. It's like so trusting, because with literally everybody we'll share, and it's just like true sharing, and like, oh, thank you, and this is good music, and that is something that is like very consistently standing strong.
Yeah.
We're all parents to the same baby, and so far it's not hurt yet, so.
That's a good analogy. I mean, people like literally their songs, it's like that as their children. You know, like that's you made that. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Don't ruin my baby, y'all.
But don't be an overprotective parent either.
You're right. Sorry, you're right. Heard.
That's funny. No, it's good because like part of what I'm is that I realized that with their having like their own solo project and being like protective, it's like everyone's kind of just posting like what and like passing out, but it's like no one's listening. At least I saw a lot of like where it's like, okay, cool, and it's like no one's listening to each other's work, and I'm like you gotta like do some groundwork of like sharing it with one another and supporting each other. So I'm like trying to foster and like find my community, you know. So
we gotta get away from like the social media aspect of it and really actually hear each other instead of being like, ooh, okay, I'll share this. But did you listen to it?
Yeah.
Like, did you take the time?
Yeah, and the difference between like listening to a song in the car and then like listening to it with your eyes shut with headphones on, it's just two completely different like listening types.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like locally it's a lot of just like, oh, let's see what he has to offer. Skips to the midway to see, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Surface commenting, and there's not really much more analyzing I've seen. It's at least when kind of compared to how you analyze your music. And it's hard because like the music you find and that connect to you it's like so personal, and it's like you have to kind of understand if it's like, oh, my friend is writing something, like it's not necessarily like gonna hit me like the music that I choose to listen to that are,
But it also could.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm. And I think getting past that and sacrificing it and spending that time deeply actually listening to people's music.
Yeah.
Is very important.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said, because this is a good segue for the note I wrote earlier when we were talking about Cherry. I've listened to your self-titled album, and I absolutely love it. And, like,
thank you so much.
I love like the sound and kind of like the vision that you had for it, because it's very reflexive of some of the stuff you shared today and y'all's tastes. Like it's just funky, and I absolutely love that. I get the impression, especially when talking like to Michael Heatley for the last episode of the podcast, that it's like not a revolving door, but the roles are like constantly like shifting. You know, you play guitar, for the band, but you mentioned like a lot of like production decisions. You want to talk about kind of that role a bit?
I think the production wise of it, I though that is something that I listen for more, is something that I've learned to step back, because in the recent projects, it's like I'll be late to the party of realizing, oh, I understand like this song now, even though I've been playing it forever.
Yeah.
Finally hearing it in full production of what everybody has like agreed to in terms of the, that it is something that always blows my mind. Which I'm always excited for releases, because I'm like, okay, now I can hear it for what the audience hears. And it's just so different when you're actually playing. There's always things I miss. So production-wise, I tend to step back and give comments and like small ideas, but less of like producing anything myself.
Sure. But to get a bass line, so you play guitar, a little bit of bass. I know you all contribute vocals. Is there anything else like noteworthy? I know you programmed and sequenced stuff for your album.
Yes. I recently got into synthesizing a whole lot. Yeah. And before it's I have Ableton, and just using sounds that Ableton has. Yeah. It's very limiting, but it's a whole wide range of things. So that is kind of my second main kind of hobby or however, just to really learn and like know will be the synthesizer.
How long have you been playing guitar for?
Almost 12 years.
Yeah.
A little over 12 years.
Dang.
But I've only gotten serious maybe like 6 years, 7 years.
Sure.
And it's like, it's truly just time and practicing because, I mean, as a kid, it's like I don't care what I really sound like if I can pull the song off.
Yeah.
And then I think without that, like that gave me the boost to just like get in head in that sense. Because if like learning synthesizer now or anything keyboard or like bass, you get too much in your head. You want to sound like your inspires, and like it's just much more hard. But I think actually putting that time is like more worth it than you will think.
Oh yeah. Do you just stumble like when you're like in the DAW, like just messing around with like sounds, or how did you kind of find that new passion, I guess, for getting into synthesis?
Well, I had a class in high school that that actually taught us how to use Ableton for a while.
Yeah.
And that kind of like just introduced me to like just endless possibilities of like combining sounds and genres. Usually my method of, at least then before I actually got a synthesizer, was to really just go through the sounds and then be like, oh, I can hear this sound into this part. And it's kind of that order most of the time.
Yeah.
But now, like, I'm really excited, inspired to learn how to go the other way and be like, oh, I can hear this, so let me make this sound. And that's like the art that's the art of synthesizing.
Circle back around, but is there anything else you want to talk about? This ought to come out by the time Paradise releases. Do you want to talk about that, your new single, a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, my God. I'm so excited for this song. It was one that we came to, and we came to a rehearsal, and I think it was Justin and Lewis. They're just like, hey, we got this song we've been working on. But it was more like they just start playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very different song for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely more modern poppy in a good way. The right touch of Cherry and New Cherry.
That's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, you get Luis Moreno rapping, which is what we wanted for like 5 years.
Forever. Yeah. But no, I love the sound of it. Because does Justin do a lot of the production?
Yeah, very much so. His brother is actually producing this album.
Oh, really?
Most of the album. I think there's like one or
Mr.
two
Colin
songs,
King, Kingstone
Really?
Studios Productions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And since they live together, yeah, Justin definitely has a kind of a big impact on production for sure.
Yeah. Tasty Jams has that indie quality. Like, you know, it sounds exactly like how y'all sound live, which is fantastic. Like, it really captures like that energy. So if this is like a taste of like what's to come, I'm very excited for the new album.
Yeah, with old Cherry Mantis music, recorded versus live, we tend to, it's almost, the recording is representative of how we would play it live.
Yeah.
And then we'll like slowly start playing it different live, so it changes in that sense. But with this new music, and especially with Paradise, it's one of those things where when we do play it live, it's gonna sound different from the record, in just a complete opposite way.
Yeah.
So listening to it will be a different pleasure than what you'll get live.
It's a great song. Check it out, everybody. Lily, let's talk about some of your solo music here.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Well, because I'd seen y'all played. What was the name of the community? Because I saw on Instagram y'all did a show together.
Yeah, if it was recent, I was invited out by Pat Pombuena. Mm-hmm. He has his own like community orchestra and also does and invites other artists for like duo gigs. Okay. So he had invited me out in Addison to do a duo gig, and I kind of just had Gabe like pick up or fill in certain things because I am really awful at soloing on the guitar. It's not my instrument of choice. Very thankful that he's even willing to. I'm always afraid to ask him to be like, hey, can you help out musically when he's like resting because it's like his day off or whatever. But yeah, it was just a little something that I picked up with Pat, and he was really, really nice to, like send it my way.
Yeah.
really interesting individual to sort of like look into as well, because he's constantly like all over the DFW Metroplex. But I had the opportunity to play a lot of my own like solo work and personal writing, because it was a 3-hour gig.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot of time to pull out as much as I possibly can.
For sure.
Very obviously, I don't have like anything out, though I do have a planned project for a potential 2024 release. I don't really have like a title. It's very just Lelly. But it is, I think, a good way at explaining what exactly my music is. I kind of coin it in the term of like very fever dream. So you can just sort of push that under, I guess, like very indie bedroom pop. Lots of particular storytelling. It's very personal. All of my writing is super personal. So it's just sort of hoping that either people can relate to the stories or just jam out.
Yeah. I'm just always curious because I didn't know that, like, I knew you from Lollipops. I didn't know that you played, and that you're also a musician and y'all work together. That was just really like fascinating. I'm like, yeah, I'd want to make like a platform for people to come on and like talk about their work. I guess what I want to ask, because I'm sort of working backwards, like here in like from where y'all are now and then where y'all have come from. Tell me kind of like your earliest memories with music and how you got to, working up to a solo project.
Yeah, I was born into a very musical family. I like to follow the cliche that I'm Filipino. And so the cliche and the stereotypes follow that like Filipinos are just sort of like kind of forced or pushed into music.
Really?
That was very much true with my family. My grandpa and my dad and the rest of them back home are very like church oriented. So like they were the like worship leaders and the worship pastors and organizers. My brother and I had no choice but to pick up an instrument. We were kind of just pushed forward and like, here you go, you gotta figure it out because you gotta play every Sunday and it's not your choice. And there was very much good and bad to it, but I otherwise very appreciate. I more frequently will play the guitar, but that's not something I really picked up until about COVID. So like I grew up playing like the drums and keyboard synthesizers and singing a lot. Yeah. But yeah, church was like for many that I feel can relate was like my segue. And then eventually, like, marching band. I was in drumline for a very long time. That's where all the terms and the technicality of, like, learning to read the literature. And then I don't really think I started writing or getting serious about thinking about music selfishly up until, like when I moved here from California to Texas. Okay. That was about 6 years ago.
Like, did you take piano lessons, like, pretty young, like that kind of stereotype? Or
Yes, my aunt is actually a piano teacher. So she was very, hopefully she doesn't hear this, but she was very much that kind of, she's so sweet. I love her. I'm actually, like, my birth name, I'm named after her. My real name is Danielle Ewell. So this is my Auntie Ewell. And Auntie Ewell, if you hear this, I'm so sorry that I'm exposing you. But very much just, like, in order to correct my posture, lightly tapping my hand with a ruler and keeping my posture up straight at the piano. So I have like a love-hate relationship with being behind a keyboard because it's just like, ooh, trauma, but also that's great. I know how to play, I guess.
I know. Like I it's like the grass is greener on the other side because a part of me is like, man, I wish my parents forced me to take piano lessons because then my keyboard skills would be much better than where they are right now. But then at the same, I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't want that, but there's a healthy balance like there, and just like as a young person, just having different things like to try out and just figure out like what do you want. There's a difference between encouraging and kind of biggest example I can think of. It's not really a trend anymore, but like the dance moms, those things where it just kind of like it's like how a lot of parents will force their dreams like onto the kids. It's like, well, I didn't fulfill this, so now you're going to. Now that I am older, like, man, like I hope that just like never is a factor. I never like become that way.
Yeah.
Not that that's what like your dynamic was at all.
Totally relate to that, and you're actually very like nail on the head. For a very long time, I didn't want to do anything musically related. Yeah. I was so, I guess, just like drawn away from wanting to be participating. That could have also just like, I associated music with having to do it performatively for church consistently against my own will or my own like just personal drive and request. Yeah. So then it was never really fun. I felt like I couldn't grow, and I didn't really listen to music for myself for a very long time. Like, it took me a while to even figure out that there is good music, and not just something that I'm given and going like, okay, like, yeah. The only person that I could relate to, like my grandpa was really big into like different aspects of jazz, especially like Latin and bossa and bolero. So that was like the only time that I could ever feel like I could get closer to relating. And that carried into my adult years. But for a long time, I was just like, well, no, I don't want to be a musician. I don't want to play the drums anymore. I don't want to play the keys. I don't want to sing. And I genuinely stopped for like 5 years. Like, didn't pick up an instrument, didn't sing, didn't do anything musically related.
Yeah. I guess, like, what changed in your mind where you're like, oh, I can express myself now instead of just the performative, like, serving like something else, you know?
I, outside of music, also studied art and for a little bit film in college. I always knew that creatively, I just love the world of art and being able to say that, you know, like it's so fruitful to anybody that participates, regardless of what you do. You're able to take like very, it's like very enigmatic. You're taking something and you're trying to do your best to translate what it is you see behind your eyes and your head and your ears. And to do that is, I think, a lot more impressive than what people take credit for. Doesn't matter how, like, technical you are. It's just the fact that you're even willing to do so. And that was a start, was having to see music from the artistic aspect. Like, I would doodle and draw a lot during this time, but I felt like, again, when you brought up words, I'm very socially awkward, or I feel like I unintentionally self-depreciate. And then, like, as funny as that can be, I also still want to be trying to convey feelings more seriously, you know, just to be like, oh, just kidding. It's more so like, oh, but this is who Lelly actually is. And so once I started finding out that music could be good and I could relate to it more, is when it started to make sense that I can express myself and make people understand who I am without actually having to use words. Yeah. So conversationally, I can set a moment in time permanently. And if anybody wants to revisit me during that point in time, they'll be able to go back to this song, understand that it was from this time period. And now I'm creating what it is that I feel in a moment that will stay that way, fixed forever. Yeah. And that was like the biggest epiphany of like, I can literally audibly diary log and get these feelings out. And yeah, it's weird to say it out loud. It's very much a going through a lot of growing pains, being able to record that, and then understanding that there's a point that there is no longer any amount of control. Like there's a really good part to creating, and then there's the like the technical aspect, being in production, and then having to, like, you almost take away the value of what you're working on when you're trying to fine tune it. So it's like knowing when to stop and knowing when to send the message, you know?
Yep. I know you're working on hopefully having something out by next year. What's something you want to say with your music? And
well, when it comes, it is just like anybody else. It is a reflection of who I was within that moment when it was made, and it'll always be that way. And as, I guess, simple as it sounds, that's the proudest way that I can say it. It's literally magic in the moment. You can go back to it. You could revisit it. My feeling within that moment will always be that way. So even if I change, at least I can go back and revisit. And I hope that applies to anybody, whether it's relative to you or you create. And when you create, like, I hope that you realize that you're literally, like, creating time capsules for yourself at all points. Like, you're creating fixed points in time. It's really cool as you continue to change. Other than that, Off Kilter has some cool shit, y'all. And Lelly will have things soon I think I've said that for 2 years straight now, so it's 2 years overdue, but Lelly has things soon. I kind of want to push it over to Gabe because I'm surprised he hasn't mentioned it.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll throw it out. I have a single coming out, though I have a couple projects for this year, and
okay.
I'll just talk about the single. It is featuring my best friend Kenneth Arias.
Kenny!
The
Nice.
late
Yeah.
bloomer is what he's called.
That's exciting.
It's very post-war piece with orchestration and piano, bass, basically.
All
Okay.
right, John Lennon. Sorry.
Could you imagine if that song was good? That's fine. I'm not trying to throw shade, but anyways.
That was fun.
Oh my god.
But
It'll be
continue.
Yeah.
What was the name of this song?
The
single?
song name is Floraison. It means the process of flowering and blooming, and it really is just kind of a reflection of sitting in the piece and not kind of thinking about anything in the future.
Yeah.
Not thinking too much in the past, but the victories.
Yeah.
And I have my sister featured on the flute in this song, and it really.
Shout out to Allie.
Yeah, Allie
Ooh.
Roth, Allie Tibbetts.
Allie Timmons.
Yes.
Nice.
And I think it really adds a lot, just the natural aspect. But has a good mix of the acoustic and synth in there. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, me too. I don't know why this has been on my mind so much in nature, because I love the imagery of like flowers, and growth, because as tragic as it is for some people, a natural like disaster of like forest fires, that's a lot of like Mother Nature's way of rebuilding, like almost like the phoenix. Like it's because it does affect people, unfortunately. That has a lot to do with kind of our encroachment on the environment, and it's unfortunate that it affects people. But I don't know, just kind of the idea that through conflict, you get resolution.
Yes.
I threw a very deep and lofty question at you based on this song.
No,
I don't know.
yeah. Very much so. I agree with you. I think mostly the song is very personal for the listener.
Yeah.
Because when you apply it to the real world, it's like kind of out of the picture or the topic.
Sure.
But when you kind of bring it closer, and it's like everyone has their own victories, and everybody kind of can feel and see to the past of like what good has become. Because I've thought the same thing. This is like not a good time to put out a song about victory and peace.
I see.
But I think personally, it can be touched to people who have been independently feeling better about themselves.
Again, it comes back to like moments of catharsis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got pretty like macro and like big scale, almost like to kind of prove a point, because to me it's like I think it's applicable on any level, and this is just this is the idealistic side of it, but hopefully it leads to something. It's like as far as like making meaningful change, those personal battles can add up, especially collectively. Because to me, it's still applicable. Like when you go through your own personal struggle, probably at the other end of it, you're more equipped and just have like a different outlook, and can then be an ally to a loved one or someone else who's in need, who may be going through something similar. That's just my personal opinion, is that those struggles can then help with different, like others' struggles, I guess. And it's, you can only like really influence like your inner circle, but that chain reaction can lead to something bigger, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Like, cause it seems like so daunting when it's like, when there's these, when there's just those huge issues that you see like on the news that feel outside of yourself. It's like, kind of, this is for everyone in the audience as well, but it's like kind of thinking of, smaller, it's like, okay, what can I do in my own circle to kind of either influence like other people's opinions or have that exchange and get like a deeper like understanding so that there isn't more suffering, I don't know.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer has a song. It was made after there was a shooting in a theater in the showing of The Dark Knight in Aurora, and the song that they performed was dedicated to all the families that have lost their people, and it was it was a very moving song, but it had moments of the victory theme of just really like celebrating the lives and not just feeling sorry for the lives.
Yeah.
Because we will grieve and feel awful, but I think more powerfully we feel like the amount of celebration that is deserved.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah, because you have to have the moment to grieve. Unfortunately, just how life is, where you have to roll and keep on moving with it. So it's like going forward. It's like what can be done, like to mourn like that loss, and then grow.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Just not taking life for granted. So I don't know. I know we were talking about your new single, but that's just we got like really deep there. But
yeah, it's as important to look back on a life as it is to live it.
For sure. That was very concise. That's a nice way of saying that. I want to talk about your solo album that you released earlier this year. I'll let you speak on it, but I have some thoughts and kind of some things that I've picked up on, sort of like the theming of your debut record.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. It was about a 5-year span of the earliest song and the latest song, but it all kind of bunched up within like the summer before, or the summer before, like in 21, I suppose. That I had songs that I had made for fun for me that I didn't care to do anything with until kind of life progressed and found meaning in life with is really truly sharing it with somebody, and that gave me the power and reason to think that my songs mean anything, and that was the first push to really like conceptualize the idea, and with it being such a wide span of age of writing, it's really just solely identifying where I come from, and not even so much of where I am now.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of stuff, even like the most recent stuff from that album, it feels old.
Sure.
And I always will feel like the next release is old. But now I feel like I'm in a place where I've caught up, and these projects in the future are current. But this project was definitely the storytelling of where I came from.
Yeah. And I mean that comes through, like I just listening to it and then kind of seeing like that growth. I don't know how much like thought you put into sequencing the track order and what that means to you, but it's very eclectic. Like there's obviously a through line with like the soundscape, and did you mix and engineer? Like how much of you like is on the production like there? So
every song that is on there, I had fully fleshed out with production and everything, especially in terms of like the reverbs and that kind of specific where something could change when you hand it over to somebody. I tried to keep a lot of control on the types of effects and kind of the glue to put it together that's similar to what I do, but with the science behind it, I can only like communicate it. So I sent out my music to have it mixed and mastered, all of the songs, but all of them were fully done and there was nothing really added. Aaron Payton worked on half of the album, and there were some things like just quick like atmospheric things added.
Yeah.
Very slightly, but 98% of it has stayed true to my vision.
Yeah.
Before bringing it to them.
Because the Galactic Program, it's such a good like opening track. I've listened to that like on repeat like so many times. Because that's like almost again you can tell me if I'm off base here, but it sounds like some like the earlier like you telling me of just messing around with sounds in a DAW and like coming to something that like just grooves, you know. And I get that sense, and yeah, it has like a lot of like modern like dance music, like not like quite like EDM, but just just electronic, like just the electronic funk,
Yes, electronic funk, and that was one of the newer tracks that I had produced.
Oh, okay.
And that one, you're pretty right on, honestly. That was the one song that it was like the quickest, and I just kept moving from section to section. I didn't listen to the beginning to like figure out what could be next. I just kept it as a section, and then at the end, when it's like the whole thing, it's like, oh, it actually works and it goes together.
Yeah.
And so that was like, I kind of lucked out.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of just like, oh, this is a cool sound that I could figure out, and then that kind of drives it somewhere else, but I'm not worried about where it's going or where it came from.
Sure.
It was like a pure, just for fun song that I decided to keep.
That's some of like at least my personal experience, like some of my best work. It's like when it just happens, like, it's not gonna be a finished track in a day, but when you get like most of it like in an afternoon and it just happens, it's like I've struggled with this one project for it. It's like, and this one just happened. Like, you're almost like frustrated. You're just like, why can't every song be like this?
Yeah, and working with electronic sounds and MIDI, and it's almost easier to do that because like you can mess up like a guitar part.
Sure.
And you can't really just fix it real quick. You got to redo it. And there's a song in there, This Time, with Jenna Wren. The solo in there, it was like whenever I was just having fun making this song, I had like all the effects on before recording, and so it's like, oh, there's some like sound things that I would want changed, but then I would need to redo the solo, and that was like magic in the moment. I can't redo the solo because that was like the only time I ever played it like that.
Yeah.
And so, back to what we were saying earlier about magic in the moment. It's like you just have to like, for me, I had to sacrifice like, well, this captures actually what I want, rather than if I were to re-record it.
Yeah.
And I'd say that there was quite a bit of things like that in the album that I kind of had to sacrifice for the motive, I guess.
Yeah.
To keep it natural. Galactic Program, being all electronic, was a pleasure because I didn't have to think big picture.
Yeah.
It was super quick, and then I can go back and refine things and not have to worry about re-recording or finding the same sound or tone.
Sure, absolutely. You're familiar with Andrew Wang. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
I am.
How conscious of an influence was that for you, or his music?
No, not that much, honestly. I wouldn't say that I'm familiar with his music. Are you talking about the YouTuber?
Yes.
Okay. I was in a phase where I was kind of going through his like electronic segments, his writing process, and like the long ones with like Rob Scallon.
Yes. Yes.
I love those, and it implements like just like throwing something down and then being okay with it, because then it could like mean something different later.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I think that was kind of the only thing that really stuck with me from him and them, is just kind of like being okay with something and having trust and hope in it later.
Oh yeah.
Or for later.
Yeah.
But musically, I'm not familiar with how he rolls.
He's been around. I don't know a lot of his personal, but I love his channel and just that exploration of sound. Because I got like some Moog modular synths like about a year and a half ago.
Oh, shit.
And it's like it's really like this is how they market it, but it's so true, because there's so much you can do in the box and like program it exactly how you want. But for the most part, digitally, it's going to be the same every time without like that human element or some other like variable. But it's like with analog gear, it's like literally you have to, in the manual, they're like, leave it plugged in for a certain amount of time so like it can warm up and be in tune. Because it won't be a tune immediately.
Yeah, that's
and
wild.
something that's fun. Like it's just like because it reacts like differently. Like even though it's electricity, it's not quite the same. And it has that human element. And I'm kind of the opinion that the electric guitar, it was like the gateway to that, or it's like almost like the first electronic. Because you have guitar techs and engineers that focus specifically like on that sound and like sequence it, like with tube amplifiers, and because you can get like a nice like clean tone. But I don't know, like how have you kind of like what parallels, because that's what I hear throughout the rest of the record, is that very like sophisticated, here's the sculpted sound, and then like human element is like you playing like over that.
Yeah,
It's a good
adding
dynamic.
yes, it is. I think the human element in synthesizing is literally just the consistent change of some parameter, and which gives it its human, because you can like play the note and then retrack it with the same note, and tone really won't change if you're just whacking
Quantize everything. Like I'm trying to get away from that so hard.
it. Yeah, right. And that is something like quantitizing at only a certain percentage is very important. But something that I've been diving into is keeping some sound, but figuring out what subtle parameter can be changed, kind of always, to where it's more of like a breath. So although it's the same kind of idea throughout the song, there's different like breath spaces and like,
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up and go into our intermission, I want to talk about Over You specifically. There's the quote, behind every great man is an even greater woman. I loved the vocals that you'd contributed to that. It's like just the texture is just like beautiful, whatever like filter that you've done, like it just like also like a standout like track on the album. However y'all want to like talk about that song in particular, but obviously like with y'all writing, it's like how much, because I can say from my perspective, like our relationship, a lot of, like I'll just be working on something and like she's the first person I go to and like trust for like legit criticism, or like helpful constructive criticism. Like I don't know what is that like.
That's an interesting question. Well, the song was made instrumentally pretty much 100% before having the vocals come in. And I think towards the end of just kind of like when everything is kind of known to what's going to happen, there was more of kind of criticism and kind of more so like atmospheric criticism. Well, it was really fun, but it was really quick as well. I play out loud, or if she's over and she she's hearing something constantly. Sure. Like she'll be like singing in her head or writing in her head, and then we'll come by and be like, play that again, and then sing over, and it would be super cool. And then like we would actually work together and think like, what could this be about, and what we think about it. And it wasn't really until all was like written for it did we kind of more dive into the criticism of like, oh, maybe at the end here we can like belt more or something.
So he did give me preemptively the feel of the song, which also very much helps. You almost had given me like not a script, if you will, but just the prompt. And then it was a lot easier to not only write and then pick up what it is that you were trying to get out of it. Maybe from my perspective, what you needed from me. It also makes it easier to sort of put myself in your head as much as possible. And then you start to fine tune.
Figuring out how to communicate with the prompt, super important. And I think you executed it really well, and brought it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was one of the songs. I got a new amp. It was my first tube amp, and
Paul Reed Smith.
Sanzera 20-watt amp.
Nice.
Combo amp.
Oh my God, he could talk about it forever if you
Sweet watt. It was perfect. So then I was like simplifying what I was playing, and I'm trying to get more into just the real touch and tone of the instrument. And that song came about being so spacious and selective, and as well as having those sounds on Ableton that really touched me in that kind of spatial freeness.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the vibe. Like I just hear like it's been stuck in my head like
Hell yeah.
forever. Yeah. Like it's just like it not like isolating, but it just you know, it's like when you close your eyes and just there's like nothing else. It's like that inner like monologue. It's kind of like where I hear like the sound staging. It's like I don't know. It's really cool.
Ah, thank you so much.
That was a great way to put it.
Yeah, that was a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. I dig it a lot. Is there anything else you want to talk about, like that song specifically? Any more behind the scenes or the record before we go to intermission?
Yeah, that song is actually the only track that I have vocals in.
What?
I didn't even hear that you're mixed in there.
Yeah, I am mixed
It's
in.
very. Oh, okay.
Oh, that he. Oh, I'm just like.
Yeah.
Sorry.
At the very end, it's the very last word. It was funny because it was like recorded poorly, but I was like, let me just experiment. So I was experimenting with like adding on.
We wanted
like
that
a unison.
octave depth.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was kind of going like, I want something lower here, but then I was like, man, maybe I just need like that male timbre.
Yeah.
So then I went to the same octave and then just kind of, and it worked really well. And it was like isolated super out of like tune and a crack or something, but then you mix it in and it's like, oh, it matches and it's like intensifies.
Yeah.
And so I just kept in that take. And it
awesome.
works well, and that's like everything I listen to at the end. Yeah. Like here I am.
I have to listen for it now. I didn't catch that because I just like I figured you double tracked it, you know, and did like oh my gosh.
Yeah, the very
Guys.
last phrase, as a whole, I sing.
So go on, close the door. It's like that little that instrumental breakdown. It almost literally feels like you're like there's this peaceful moment of falling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's literally like me repeating, finally falling free.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very powerful. It's like this really like driving impact that just suddenly just disperses. Like everything just sort of disintegrates and then it gets back to atmosphere.
Yeah.
And again, catharsis. Just feels really good. Like you're letting all the last bits of emotion out and you're like, bam.
Yeah, when you finish your cry and you're not breathing hard anymore, but you're just breathing.
You're just sitting in it.
Yep. Oh yeah. Absolutely. That's some of the best music is the reflexive and introspective kind.
Where do we find the time? How do you read between the lines? Who stays inside, who goes? Lose track, put me on hold. Reflect, refined, remind and rewind. Reflect, refined, remind and rewind. Buzzed opportunities, where did they go? Finding ways to see perspectives in split harmonies. Drawn to the past, stuck in the now. Past feelings, future dreaming, flitting, feeling, feelings rearing.
no clear line to find any reasoning behind the feeling still here, the ease that I feel when I know that you're near. Maybe the formula is wrong, maybe the lyrics need another song, but I'm lost in the maybes, and that was the problem. It's time that we solved it. Between cool kids and sunflowers, and this early summer of ours, time it's into hours. So why don't we stay here and watch them fly by? Yeah, Gabe.
Editing magic, y'all. Editing magic. You will never know.
Well, getting back into it, do y'all want to talk about that song now that everyone else at home has heard about it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Put me on hold.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mr. Roth.
Yeah, early summer, maybe the spring of 2021, when we were meeting each other's parents, and well, no, I was just hanging out over there.
It's definitely
where
the
she
summer.
lived. Yeah. Oh, it was. Mm-hmm. Okay. That
Remember different details. Yeah.
Out of the songs that are publicized or we do play, it was probably the most that it was such a equal input to the song. The beginning to the end, it was together working it through, and it was fun. It was so fun, and you know, as we've had the song, we've kind of refined it in ways, but it's basically been the same since we wrote it.
There wasn't really much to change because it needed to be the way that it is. As fun as it was, thank you for saying fun, it was also very hard. I think we were communicating with each other during that time in things that we didn't want to openly say because it was just a really hard learning time, I'd say. But very fruitful experience. One of I think the rare moments in which you're able to capture a piece of art that is very reflective of the two people that are in it, of just ooh, we're not talking about this right now, but we're writing about it, and we're still not talking about what's happening, so...
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the most difficult place to be in, to actually make a time capsule if you don't want to talk about it.
Your voice got very aggressive there, Mr. Roth. Huh? You're doing all right.
I got a little too hydrated in our minutes of pause.
Yeah, now you're rejuvenated, so keeping youthful here.
And my blood is going a little faster.
That's funny. It's almost easier to say certain things, not isolated, but into a microphone or recording it or just writing it down than it is actually, especially when not an issue, but just when the person you need to talk to is the subject of the song, and you're just it's a beautifully awkward period of time. But that experience, having written it together and then going through that experience, do you think that was the catalyst for change and kind of working out those feelings?
I think the time period when it did come about was pretty close to the time that it was going to need to come out anyway. So I don't think it was at least for me, it wasn't too much of a problem timing-wise. In the moment, definitely was a present.
Yeah, not coincidental, but almost like a byproduct of the situation. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It definitely... Okay, to add some context and throw myself under the bus, I guess. Yeah, we were going through a tough period with this song that was just sort of representing how we felt and what we were going through. Because I had months before previously gotten out of a very serious relationship. And so it was something that was trying to transform and a lot of push and pull. So the communication was very much just telling each other where that other person was at without having to it's a very Gen Z approach, if you will. Like not having to communicate with real words in person, but like we're just going to use songs and everything else to sort of maybe indirectly poke at it without having to just confront it.
Yeah.
Non-confrontational approach.
Yeah. Taking away that like a whole filter of how you look and how you say it is when it's taken down, then you're still saying the words you want to say, but the interpretation is now like more direct. And when there is that filter on, and you have to like filter, but you have to like think about what you look like and how you say it. It could be like that is the reason why we don't want to confrontate. Yeah. So music is a great way to put that filter off and not question why we want to take it off, and it works well.
I think it's just like a really like artistic approach. It's just easier to be yourself with music, like in the song, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That was less of a question. That was more of a statement. That it's just easier to, I don't know. It's like there's like, you can be less filtered while navigating that. I don't know.
I think it's less scary to express yourself musically or in any other way.
Yeah.
And I think I would rather be judged by what I'm telling you through music than to just how it's presented naturally.
Yeah. Let's talk about lollipops.
Lollipops. Okay. So it's really bittersweet because unfortunately after Futura Fest and then another upcoming vending opportunity, I will be taking a hiatus for the rest of the year just to like refocus. But it is my little bakery business. I do home baked goods. It has a little bit of Filipino influence and flair, and I do cream cookies. It's been a fave, so I'll be displaying a lot of that. My cream cookies, and maybe I do like their ube, so like Filipino like yam root Oreo brownies. My aunt used to run a bakery in Carrollton where she made like pandan ice cream, and it's just it's such a brilliant flavor that I could represent. I just haven't found a way to like implement it into my menu. But I have made other Filipino favorites. I've made like suman, so like sweet sticky rice. I've made other sticky rice desserts like I think it's like biko, which is like a more like caramelized. It's all Filipino inspired. Yeah. Because that is what I am. So.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about this before, but just one of my favorite things about traveling is just trying food from different places. Because I know nothing about Filipino cuisine or desserts, and because I've seen the name pull, like that's like my first, like I'm terrible with names, but that's how I do your name. I was like, that's from Lollipops, like the shop, like all the other like events we've been to. I'm like, holy shit! I had like this connection, and it was like. It's so good. I think it was the turkey in Syria, like the benefit show that y'all have done.
Oh my gosh, those are the cookies?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh my god, they were so good. They were
Yay!
Yeah.
so good.
Cream cookies. Those are my cream cookies.
Yeah. Those are fantastic. Because how long, like, when did you really had like a passion or like a talent like for that?
It's something that's been really common, like growing up for me.
Yeah.
Again, like with food, it is like when you're cooking, you can get away with a lot more, if you will. You know, like if you've maybe like underseasoned something, there is a point where you may overseason, but you can still like the ingredients are forgiving. My aunt owned a bakery here or in Carrollton for a little bit under the name Devious Desserts, and I pulled a lot of inspiration from her and her experience just in the culinary world. And I just thought it was really, really cool to take like things that were already very specific to me and try to implement that. Not really even marketing. I love baking, like cheesecakes, anything. It's like a sense of comfort for me. So it was just like another way to translate how I could express to somebody else that like, this is something that I care about. Therefore I care for you. So eat it. But that's always been something that's been involved like since childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mentioned that before. It's like from one artist to another, I hate marketing. I hadn't been I was off social media for years.
Yeah.
Until recently, I was like, well, there's no other way for people like to discover anything. Like, the podcast, for all intents and purposes, is a promotional tool, but I don't want it to feel that way, because then it's like, because everyone and anybody can see right through that. It should be just natural. Like, I do this because I enjoy it. Like, I had a skill for audio engineering, and I had most of the gear already, and it was like, I really want to do this. Like, it's a good excuse to just talk to people and like have like real communication that we had. It is an art in of itself, and like making something, and it's just, I don't know. I think that's really cool, just to lean into like your other strengths and just like incorporate it like naturally, instead of like, I don't know, like not an afterthought. I don't know. It's cool.
Food is obviously a necessity.
Yeah.
But if you extend it into different ways, you get like what culture, you get to really know the person that you're trying to connect to better. Yeah. And it feels very fruitful and fulfilling when you could, without it sounding so freaking cheesy, like hit somebody's sweet spot of just like, like an expression, or somebody like letting me know that this reminds them of a certain aspect of like a point in time in life. It's just, it's great because I can relate to that in a very different way. So it's just like, sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, there's like they're called treats because American culture, we have at large an issue with like overindulgent with foods and other things, but there's a place for like, it makes just a really nice gift. You just want to show like some kind of affection and appreciation. I don't know. It's very simple because truthfully, I tell people this as far as like gift giving goes. It's like, I don't want stuff. Like, I have family all the time. It's like, why don't you like buy like, it's like, first off, it's like, I'm not going to ask my family to buy me like $100 microphones or even contribute. I'm just like, it's like, no, I can do that myself, but absolutely I'll take like gift cards, like to like places like to eat or like whatever. Cause it's like, it is like just that experience. Like, I don't know. It's just, sweets aren't a necessity, but it does, it just can be like very like uplifting, just like a very simple gesture. And sometimes those are the most like meaningful. I mean, get crazy deep on like the dessert thing, but yeah.
No, I love it.
It's also really satisfying, and just like, especially like even just like cooking, like outside of like the dessert world, it's like just doing that for somebody else, like just making it more than like, let's go run, grab somewhere else. It's like, oh, I made this for you. I don't know. It's just nice. I hope it becomes like something fruitful that you can like continue to do or incorporate in some other things. Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as lollipops goes?
Yeah. It will eventually, I'll say eventually, come back up at some certain point. As much as a labor of love that it has been to do lollipops, just like anything else, it can get really stressful. You find ways to burn yourself out, and I think I just have jumped in and bit off more than I can chew. Again, not to sound cheesy. I bit off more than I can chew, and
that's a good incidental fun.
I was doing so well, and you had to break. I bit off more than I can chew, and now I am sort of learning that as like a good and bad consequence of what it is that I need to learn, just to be like more efficient. I also want to get more inclusive with like just like variety, and by variety I mean like sticking to like core flavors, but making sure like everybody can access lollipops. Yeah. So like having like more gluten-free, which Filipino desserts are already gluten-free by chance. Mm-hmm. They're already gluten-free and vegan, which is great. Like that was not intended, but what a great time to be Filipino, I guess.
It's like, now's the time.
Well,
That's funny.
And I'm not serious about that because that country has like the most cases of like high blood pressure and gout. And anyway, it's not the point.
Oh boy.
I'm like, I don't know if I'm throwing my own people underneath.
Oh,
the
y'all
rug
are too
right
sweet. Too nice.
So yes, Lollipops will eventually be making a return. It'll have better ideas. It'll have just trying to implement like a better culture around enjoying desserts. And I want it to be accessible. I don't want to change my prices. That's been something that people have been pushing on to me. And I get it from an economic point of view, but also because of the way that just society has been in terms of our finances. I feel like it would be nice to be like just having the same foundation of like, this is how it's been and this is how it will always be. I don't want to upsell. I don't want to be something that's like labeled as gourmet just because it's more expensive. I want it to be of financial convenience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, with any business that's a good like balance. Like it's fickle with music and like selling yourself, but with something like literal and more like tangible. Like I also minored in business, so sometimes if I use businessy terms, it's like stop me because sometimes I hate it. But on, like as far as like understanding, like with music, like with an art, it's like knowing like your audience and like what their wants and needs are. There tends to be, especially like in marketing, I'm going to use it, but like misinterpreting like data where it's like, oh, I'm getting all this feedback, so I should just cave and give people what they want. And it's like, yes and no. It especially like with music, it's like, you know, you can get like useful feedback, but you can't just completely abandon your ideals or original like intent.
Yes.
It just kind of like, you know, instead of just like bending over backwards, everybody, you have to draw like a line. That's cool.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it will be missed. There was one time I was napping and I woke up to a bite of a cookie.
What do you mean
Yeah,
it will be missed?
yeah, you got a taste test to give
It's true.
useful feedback. Yeah.
Oh, you know, yeah.
Oh,
Obviously,
lots.
I can get it at home still. Yeah,
Yep.
and that is a risk I'm always willing to take.
Oh my gosh. With all that being said, we're finally going to talk about our music picks here. So we'll do it in the order in which we listen to them. So, Lelly, let's talk about hers.
Yes.
I'm going to start with some of my thoughts first, just because I wanted to hold off on kind of like what we were hearing, like so we can kind of independently like come up with some of our own like thoughts, which I think is interesting because it's not reaction content. It's first impressions of music and sharing and having that exchange. And we listened to the track Speed Racer, and it is funky. I like it, like probably since the 2010s, like with electronic funk, just kind of distilled. Because it's this song isn't like quite disco, I wouldn't say, but just how eclectic. Because there's so many flavors of like dance music now. There's like this mutual like agreed understanding that it's in so much of like indie music, and I absolutely love it. Like, because it's not all samey, but it's like there's just certain innate, like without reinventing the wheel every time, just to make something groove. And it's like I think the community at large is like has that understanding. But yeah, absolutely love the track.
Yes.
I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, it's definitely dancey. I think I would dare to say almost funky. One of my favorite parts is what starts it off and really has that driving force is just like that continuous bass line. And it really sets the tone for like there's like I love the relationship between what the bassist does with the guitarist, because that's what the band is. It's just the bassist, the guitarist, and then they electronically like implement and produce everything else, and they played it live that way. Yeah. So it's just the two of them sort of hopping back and forth and doing their best to really emphasize the rest of the track itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very tasty. It almost has like a little bit of when it gets into like little pre-choruses, like almost like a little bit like of Latin groove going on. But I don't know, it's the song itself, but hers in general with their writing, they're so good at just like really pushing their storytelling. And they have songs, including Speed Racer, where it's a very simplified topic, but the instrumentation really carries. And so I don't know how, without regurgitating that, like both the bassist and the guitarist really like push. Steven, the guitarist and the lead singer, his vocals, it's like very like modern throwback. A lot of their influences come from different artists spanning from the 80s anywhere to like US, but also like they listen to like a lot of like 80s French pop. And so that could also be a driving factor for a lot of that, like that very interesting particular dancey grooves that are going on within the song.
Yeah, because I have in my notes like definitely the bass, because it reminds me when I started learning bass, one of the first songs that's like really good and like bass line to learn is Brown Eyed Girl, Van Morrison. It was actually the guitarist that performed bass on that particular recording, and it's like I love when there's just a good counter melody, because it's like I'm drawing parallels because in both of these songs it's like the guitar is like just kind of comping, like just like adding like lots of texture and sparkle, and like really it's like the bass line is dude, and like that's the melody. They're both like melodic, and I love kind of the interplay between like voices like that, in particular like in dance when you like, you know, because you can walk a bass line all day, and a lot of the times in like pop, yeah, most of the time you're just playing the root, which is not as exciting for both the audience and for the bass player. So it's just like it just adds like a lot of energy. You have to stay in the pocket for sure, which they do, and they pull off really well. And then some like the synthesized like drum sounds, and in particular, you talked about like the vocals. I love, like when we were talking about Over You, I think like as a vocalist, like for production choices, it's like your voice is an instrument, but your microphone and everything else is an instrument too. Sometimes it gets a little lost, and it's a careful balance of like having your voice, but then like besides just singing over, like having like something more to it. I think it came through in that song a lot.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say about it, because I'm sure y'all listened to it together before.
The bass line is so good. But the one thing that really shines is like the duo conversating back and forth outside of the lyrics. And well, they do it amazingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the song is called Speed Racer, and I think even in that fixed tempo, like they're really getting the message across that it's really like driving fast pace.
Yeah, it doesn't ever feel like a rushed kind of chaotic. It's super coherent all the way through, even though it's so full all the way through.
That was a good point, because it's like it's fast, but it's like it's in control. Like it sounds like, because it's up tempo, but it's cool. It doesn't sound frantic. Yeah. That's a very good point. I like that quite a bit. Because towards the end, like as far as it being conversational, there's lots of like parallel thirds and like other like voices towards there too. That's really cool. Really play together. I don't know. It's nice. It's a nice song.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you don't want to add?
It's like the tempo and the way it's driven is so like dance welcome, which is like, because it's so like paced out and chill, but it's like you moving, so it's like an effortless dance.
Yeah, I like that. Are you ready to talk about your pick?
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it. Femi Phantom.
Yeah, we were debating that because it's femme fatale. My
Femme
French
fatale. Gotcha.
My French is terrible.
Shut up.
That's the new Butch Hartman series.
Sorry?
Not Danny Phantom, Femi Phantom.
Femi Phantom.
Femi.
Danny Phantom could never. You yassified Danny Phantom. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who's
all
it by?
here for
Like
Lockhart.
Lockhart. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I love arpeggiated synth kind of like pedals on there, like particularly like in the chorus. They're pretty fast chord changes, but that arpeggio is like pretty like constant, and that's what I think is interesting about dance music a lot, is that it's repetitive. But the same like video game music, where you have like this, like you almost, I don't know, like you can tell me your thoughts, but it's like when you're making like a loop, maybe even subconsciously, but it's like, are you kind of aware of it's like, it's okay, like this like is getting like, boring, like on a loop, I need to change something, and it's like just the right balance of how do you make this interesting and want to keep listening to it over and over and over, like just that
oh my god,
sameness. I don't know.
It's like a numberless equation to like keep the audience interested.
Yeah.
And with when I started getting into electronic dance music, I'm trying to think of a group. I don't know, but there was a song I was listening to. I was really high, and it was just a downbeat, and like things are just kind of doing the same thing, but then there's like some sort of difference in like every single like beat, and to finding what can be adding or subtracting to also not change anything about it, and keeping the theme just the same. It's like you have to like narrow how much of sounds that you have to change. So you have to narrow it down to like, oh, we'll keep the sound, but let me change this like filter, or let me change this effect on it, or rhythm, or something just so different, just to keep it interesting.
Absolutely. Talking specifically about Lockhart featuring Fish Bach, which is kind of a fun.
Yeah, I haven't.
I don't know anything about these artists.
Yeah, there's like no other songs by them.
Really?
At least together or with one of them that you can look up. This is the only song I've discovered by them.
That's interesting.
How did you discover this song? Did it just kind of pull up in your recommended?
I think it did.
Yeah.
Spotify.
Yeah, I had just got on like the Parcels and like Papoose wave, which is just like kind of the same texturally as the song.
Okay.
And I think it came in my weekly, Discover Weekly.
Nice.
And it's been like the name of the category of my current music. It's just kind of like the top song that meets every single bullet point that is in like this space I'm in.
Okay.
Shout out to the algorithm.
Yeah, I know.
Treating you right.
Spotify's amazing.
Yeah, I love it. That's going in my mix.
Yeah. Awesome.
Because I just have like my random stuff playlist from like the last 3 years. Yeah. Lily, I want to hear your input.
I feel like you guys had, I know that's not an excuse, but I had like this analogy of like having just like take a square box.
Yeah.
And the foundation of the rhythm is what's constantly being hit, but sometimes the direction changes, and sometimes like it'll go into like in between like those split notes that'll happen throughout the song. Like you have all of like the really cool atmospheric elements happening in the middle that don't really touch the rhythm that's happening within that square. But sometimes the square will decide to change the pattern or even hit diagonals as opposed to. Yeah. So it's just really cool to see something just sort of like you take something as simple as the box and watch the elements just sort of change, but it's still within that box. And then before you know it, it's just gone. Yeah. And you'll be like, whoa, I'm still processing, but it was all just in that box. So how did that?
Yeah, it is a simple song, and when you dissect it, like all the parts are simple. They're playing basic chords and rhythms, really, but it's like continuously interesting. Yeah. And it's like they're playing such a stereotypical next section progression or something, but then they make it original. Yeah. With some other element, and so it's like. It's inspiring in that sense, because then you can just take some really simple form that you can just copy and then totally change what's inside the box or off the top or off the base. And it's like it's almost easy to make something original because you're stripping down the foundation.
And that's something that I feel like if you bring it to the context of like artists who create, it can get very touchy as to what people can be deemed what is original when you're relying on such like a basic foundation, if you will. So if you can extend it up until this point and then acknowledge that you're only giving yourself like this, like that's what I love about this genre of music and sort of what Gabe's side of delving into, and I guess the examples that you've brought up in general, because there's way more. There's a lot of songs that I think we share and have a love for where it fits within this like that cover that L'Impératrice has ever done. If you've ever heard of the group L'Impératrice, really great French funk pop band, or The Empress en français.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Oui.
I can read French for the
Yes.
most part, but yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, are you guys ready to talk about "Welcome to Hell" from Black Midi?
Black Midi. I'm
damn.
so ready.
Remember, like, 'cause we've been talking for a bit.
Oh yeah, it's still a fever dream happening in the back of my head, both
Yeah.
audibly
Yeah, now that
and
it's like stewed a little bit.
Yep.
Whichever one of y'all would like to start.
Oh, Gabe, you're gonna have to take the reins for this one real quick.
The video, if just the video is like, watch this if you're high on YouTube, is basically that. Yeah. Because it keeps going and it's like full of meaning, like crazy meaning that probably went way over my head.
You're very right. You have to like from both the song perspective and just like getting the animation down. Like you have to sit through that probably more than 10 times. Like there's so much to catch. There's so much going on, and I felt like it was already really like just sort of pulling me in almost emotionally. But I had no idea what. I'm just like, wait, wait.
Like it's information overload, and how they play like live is like almost exactly how it sounds on the album. It's chaos. Like, and I believe it's a trio, or I'm not familiar with all the members of the band, but really cool stuff. What if you had to like put a meaning to something, like either like with the words? I can pull up like some of the lyrics or the music in general. What's just a quick note that y'all can think of that you personally got out of it, or how did it make you feel? Like we're in therapy.
Oh man.
It was really like pulling into the hard truths, maybe of like social ideas. It's very much listen if you want to listen.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty chaotic, but it's like it was so well composed. Holy shit! It was like a soundtrack, theater music, but then it also was like I got a lot of like Japanese rock.
Yeah.
And like some like Jimi Hendrix kind of attitude.
Okay.
Or like the harder Elvis attitude of just like listen to what I'm saying if you're here, you know.
There's like a little bit like of a surf rock element to like a lot of like what they do, but it's like twisted and warped. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. Lily, what did you think?
Man, I have so many things to say.
Yeah.
I'm looking over the lyrics right now, and I'm already just so blown away by the lyricism now that I'm like getting a chance to look at it, though I'm not trying to look too deep. I think I felt like I was like tripping a lot over. I felt like I was physically in the term of tripping like over a rock. Thank you, Gabe.
You're falling down a well.
That it also applies very much so.
The album art like absolutely matches like the art style.
Dude.
Like it's just
Like especially at moments in which like as the video was going, I feel like the music was really good at like all those like little like the syncopated rhythm like switch ups is what I mean by tripping. It's like you're like falling into the next verse, and it really carries into like the power of what's happening behind his voice. But like he maintains like the emotion. Like there's no change, but you really just almost feel yourself like sinking. Like it's like a sinking and an uncomfortable sinking in your stomach that's happening is what I felt like was happening from both aspects visually, but also just like musically. And that's the best that I could explain right now. I was
There was a scene in the video where she was sinking, or someone was sinking in like the floor, and it was hard. When it was like, yeah, it feels like you're sinking, but not like around a cushion, but around like hard tile and floor and stuff. So it's like an uncomfortable sink to where it's like an impossible sink.
Mm-hmm. I love, because I guess if you had it, because I hate defining genres, but sometimes it's helpful. But it's like it definitely is art rock.
Art rock.
Yeah, because like I mean it is like a conversation piece, because who knows what the authorial like intent is, but like oh man, like because I love that you say that, because it's like that scene in the video, like because it the song's called Welcome to Hell. If you're watching like on YouTube, I'll have like the link for everything down below. But if you watch along with the video, like I love the mixed media and like the representation, like when he's in that hellscape, where it changes from, because definitely I think they may have done some stuff in Maya, because there's some mixed media going on with like 3D rendering, but like flat, like solid like colors, and then it gets into like more like rendered lighting and more complicated like geometry when the male protagonist, like that character, is in hell or whatever, like scape there,
Right.
and it's just kind of a juxtaposition, like really like representing like the meta, like being outside of your reality, and it's like that, like something like not incomprehensible, but like the overwhelming like truth, I guess, like it's behind like the curtains. I don't know. It's very, very heady, but like, yeah, it's like he's already at the pit and then sinking into the floor like further. And it feels like just that uneasiness like in your stomach, where just like you're being like weighed down. It's like you're on the floor, but you feel heavy. I don't know. I just like that you picked up on that. It was a very cool observation, because I didn't even think of that way, a lot of these things, like it's like almost like sobering, like because you're talking about like kind of like if you're willing to listen like to like the truth, it's like sometimes it's painful, and like watching it the first time around, you're just like, this is not a pleasant like head space like to be in, but it's like kind of like a rude awakening. I don't know. I feel like it's what the character goes through. Is there anything y'all want to add or like bounce off of like that at all? Like, now that I've said that,
I think you put it really well when you guys were talking about like that like the very fractal imagery that was happening when he was like diving down deep, like a very obvious denial of what was happening within the moment, and it almost just seemed like he was trying to find his way back up to all like the softer imagery, but he just couldn't get there. Yeah. And it was all just working against him, which is, again, very much like, well, welcome to hell. Like, this is your own personal hell that's happening. Yeah. And so when you tie it in with, like, whether or not he's choosing to listen is going to be very subjective to him. That's his choice, and he's just choosing not to take it. Yeah. And as I'm reading this, it's just like, oh, yeah, you're very much choosing not to take it.
Yeah, because, like, at first I was like, how's this related? Because I knew the song before I watched the video, and I was like, how's this related at all? I'm like, oh, because the first time I watched it, it's like, oh man, you feel bad, but like almost like Tarantino, like some of it's like told like out of order, and then like towards the end you're not sympathetic towards like at all. It's like, well, you kind of maybe not deserved that, but you definitely deserved something, and it is like, yeah, it is like an uncomfortable truth, because the video to me, it's like particular, like someone's like, it's centered like in a very artistic, like out there way, like about like revenge porn.
Yeah.
And just how like relationships like break, or almost a parasocial relationship, because he's on like whatever like device, and like kind of stalking. Because if you rewatch it, it's like he did something in her room to record whatever, and it's just like very sleazy, not and my interpretation of like the very like end, because ultimately it's like, good overpowers like evil, because like there's of like, the female character gets like her like angel wings, and just this overwhelming like imagery like in the video, and but just people like who don't choose to better themselves, because this is the difference between like making a bad decision and being a bad person. It's like you make a mistake, you own up to it. In the video, that's a very like unforgivable mistake. Like obviously they're a serial like just no good, corrupt, but even like after, because like you see it for a second, like with her power, like he's cut in half, but then like he drags her down with her until the very end, and that's how vindictive people like are. And it was just weird because like I was like, because just stuff like that, because it's so dense, and there's like because it feels like Steven Universe, like a lot, but if it wasn't on Cartoon Network, I don't know, because I got that art style where it's like that with like the MC Escher like backgrounds. It's bizarre. I forget the artist who did everything, but there's a scene that actually was in a different video for a different single that was reincorporated like of this world, and apparently I don't know if y'all saw the scrolling text like throughout. Apparently that actually means something that people have like translated like parts of it.
Whoa.
I don't know about, but everyone at home, go look into it, because I definitely will. I'll look back into it. But there's a lot to talk about and unpack with that song. But definitely listen to that entire album.
We know what we're listening to when we're going home.
Yeah, on the way back home. I mean, drive safely. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that, or to wrap up our discussion?
Man,
Call it a day.
I think the only thing I want to say about I guess the video itself, it's like if you took Steven Universe and then aspects of like, I don't know if anybody watches like anime or old school 80s, 90s anime. I'm a big fan of Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going. Yeah.
And there are just like lots of context in end parts of you get to like the end of Evangelion, and then you implement like the feel of what you've determined about the music video itself, and you combine it, and it just heightens the mood. Gabe doesn't know because he doesn't watch anime like that.
I haven't seen Evangelion yet, but I need to, and I've heard lots of great things.
Just be mentally healthy enough to do so.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. Or be prepared to be mentally not healthy-ish for a bit after you watch it.
Thank you for the trigger warning.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Well, I think that's it. That's a wrap. I appreciate y'all staying here, and recording and listening to some music with me. Is there anything else? It's time to plug things. What do you need to say before we leave?
March 28th, Flore Zone will be out everywhere. Late bloomer. I said March? Yeah. Oh. May 28th. Yeah. Late bloomer and Boy Rothling.
Y'all better have listened to Cherry Mantis's new single, Paradise.
Yeah. It's been out for at least a week now. So
watch the music video.
If you haven't already, yes.
Peep the music video, y'all.
Any socials is just how it's spelled. Boy Rothling. Yeah.
And then OKAY_LELLY for my personal page. Off Kilter is going to be OFF.KILTER._DTX. So try both and see which one works.
I'll have everything linked down on the YouTube page as well.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for coming out and being on the podcast today. I've been looking forward. It's been a long time in the making. Very exciting.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. My name has been Sijlent. I'm going to spell it again for the algorithm. Sijlence. And we will catch you all on the next one.